So today we are discussing beyond lip service, embracing true allyship in the workplace. Co-facilitator Josh Grace and senior consultant at Ed-Enuf. We will be discussing this and leading this discussion together. And before we get really started, I want to be able to start us off in understanding using the chat. What's your name, your geographic location? What is your role at your organization? And then maybe in 1 to 2 sentences, briefly describing why this topic is important to you. Important to me as I want to continually learn and understand how to best support my team members. Love it. Because I want to learn how to fully embody allyship while also giving space for marginalized voices. That's so great. Thank you. Learn how different leaders will implement allyship in their respective industries. That's great. This is so great. Thank you so much. And please continue to keep typing in the chat if you haven't gotten a chance already. But I'm going to keep us moving forward and introduce ourselves. I noticed some new faces in the room, but my name is Junelle Mariñas. I am the Associate Director of our Ed-Enuf e-learning platform. So what that means is I just get to be able to oversee the content that goes out, as well as the topics for our lunch and learns as well. And I also get to work closely with our partners in their own professional development learning journeys as well. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Josh.
Thank you, Junelle, for that warm beginning to our time together. My name is Joshua Grace, and I'm a senior consultant at Ed-Enuf, one of the trainers on the Ed-Enuf platform. So you may have seen me in some of the videos. And I'm grateful to be here today and looking forward to helping equip the folks here with some tools to be able to move from beyond just a sense of I want to act on behalf of somebody else towards understanding the folks that they're would like to act on their behalf, and also their connection to the organization.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
And during this time, these are critical elements for trying to build the highest amount of psychological safety we can for this session, but the posture of listening, being respectful. We acknowledge that disagreement and different perspectives are normal, and we encourage that everybody is welcome to participate, which means asking clarifying questions, even say while Junelle or I we're sharing, and we're open to your feedback. But one thing about using I statements that goes a long way, because when we speak from our own perspectives, it helps us to understand that somebody else can speak from theirs. And in that interchange, we have a lot of really good learning. In terms of our objectives for today, we want to have a clear definition that is something memorable about authentic allyship in the workplace. And we're differentiating between authentic allyship and performative allyship, which we'll describe more about. But we want to help give tools for strategy. So in your contexts, how could there be some strategic practices for developing authentic allyship for the good of the org? Some of our guidelines that you'll see us practicing is attempting to share the mic, where we don't want to just be listening to one voice, or say even in the group, if we're only one person asking all the questions, but we want to intentionally hear from different people. We want to approach with genuine curiosity, with a desire to learn more from somebody. We're attempting to lead with love, with a softness. What we're trying to do here, we acknowledge is difficult, and in each of your contexts, doing allyship work is challenging. So we want to infuse it with some love and some softness for each other. And we want to make space for learning mistakes, as we're all trying to innovate and try different methods of changing our workplaces. We understand that that's going to be a bumpy process sometimes, and especially during this time, we want to make that space where sincere questions. We don't expect everybody to have the same experiences or have done all the same preparation work. So space for learning mistakes is good. I want to offer a legal disclaimer that we are not offering direct legal advice for you to follow, but we're trying to provide tools for you to be able to make decisions for how to implement the concepts in your particular concept, in your particular context. Okay, so when we get to the definition of allyship in the workplace, there's a really good article that we'll give to you as part of the resources for this session in the Harvard Business Review. And the authors described it as such, that we view allyship as a strategic mechanism used by individuals to become collaborators, accomplices, and co-conspirators who fight injustice and promote equity in the workplace through supportive personal relationships and public acts of sponsorship and advocacy. To me, I would ask in a moment of if you have anything that you would sort of add to this or a question you would have, but one clarifying point that I would make is the authentic allies and effective authentic allies have both this desire for equity and justice, and they have a desire, a loyalty to the organization. And when you have an imbalance there where, say, somebody would want to make the changes, but doesn't have the clear commitments to the organization, their ability to speak into the leadership or the mechanisms of change get compromised. So really, authentic allyship, as we're defining it, has both of those components, both that desire for change and that loyalty to the org. Would anyone like to, as we getting started here, either elaborate on this definition or ask a specific question about it? I'm hoping that we're all moving in the same direction, but this is how we check in. Are there any words in this definition that are challenging for you?
Maybe I understand the meaning of co-conspirator. That's challenging, I think, for me to use this individually, personally. I don't, conspirator sounds a little bit more aggressive than my personality, I like to consider.
That's a good point. And it also can have a certain connotation that might sound either illegitimate or, not out in the open. And that certainly, I think the intent is more that there's a strategic connection with people where there's a mutual engaging conversation. But yeah, I can see how co-conspirators might not be the.
I think it's
important.
challenging in a good way, because sometimes I think to be an authentic ally, I might need to be more aggressive than is my nature and my natural state. So I might need to take a risk. So I think I meant challenging in that way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
I think in a similar vein, I think the word strategic stands out to me in the fact that it's like action oriented and like versus just like, yeah, I'm an ally, but like thinking through like what are my actual strategies, or like, yeah, not just being passive, I suppose.
Thank you. That's a very good insight.
Awesome. So we're gonna get into an activity. Really appreciate your answers, Amy and Jacqueline. And we're gonna continue with an activity to get us warmed up for breakout sessions as well, but really want to be able to start out with a barometer activity. So what I'm gonna do is provide you 3 prompts one at a time. And what I would invite you to do is, using the chat, rate your answer between 1 being strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, and then 5 being strongly agree with the prompt. So this first one, using the chat, again, 1 being strongly agree or strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, 5 being strongly agree. I have witnessed acts of allyship in my workplace. 1 strongly disagree, 3 neutral, 5 strongly agree. Okay, I'm seeing 3s, 5s, 4s. Could someone who answered a 4 or a 5 real quick, how did that look like in your workplace? It could be a small moment. But what did witnessing an act of allyship in your workplace look like?
I'll share again if I'm not talking too much. Betsy, who is on this call, I think she leads a team, a diverse, racially linguistically diverse team, and she's a really strong advocate on their behalf when certain policies or practices are rolled out staff-wide that may need more clarification to leadership.
That's awesome. Thank you, Amy. So what I'm hearing is it's not just being an authentic ally can also be in part looking over the policies. It's sometimes it is being in conversation with the people and advocating for people in that way, but other times it's also just looking at the structure of your organization and having some questions as well to be able to say, hey, does this include everyone? That's awesome. Thank you.
A comment from the chat is we had a team member challenge / suggest a change to a way that we were starting our team meetings to ensure people felt psychologically safe.
That's awesome.
Excellent. That's a great example.
Okay, second prompt. I have an ally or allies in my workplace. Just again, 1 being strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, and then 5 being strongly agree. I'm seeing 3, 5, 4, 4. Okay, real quick, using the chat or feel free to unmute yourself real quick, maybe in 1 or 2 words, how does that ally or allies make you feel in the workplace? Do they make you feel safe, empowered? What's a word that you would describe that person or people?
I'll share a little bit. I feel very empowered by my allies. Amy and Bexy, they're here. They're always pushing us to, do stuff that we never think of doing it. And yeah, so I feel very empowered and happy that I can do more what I think. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Rosa. In the chat, I see connected, supported. Love it. Considered. That's so great. Okay, and then last prompt. I feel confident in knowing how to be an authentic ally to my colleagues. 1 being strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, 5 being strongly agree. 4, 3, 3. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 3s and 4s. Does anyone want to unmute themselves real quick and share some insight?
I think I mean, even just showing up here, I would imagine a lot of people relate. Like I have the desire to be an ally and to be like, even just those words that were like put in the chat, like I want to like foster that connection and those variety of things. I think where I don't always feel confident in knowing is because I think similar to that definition you shared at the beginning, that a lot of that involves like the collaboration or being what like that person needs you to be versus just what you think like people or team needs. So I would say like I have the desire, but wanting to grow in my ability to know what different people may want or desire from me in that support.
Definitely, definitely. And I love that insight, because being an authentic ally is not coming in to become the hero of a situation, right? Or of a conversation. It's really about understanding the person, and do they want to be supported in this moment? Do they not want to be? And so navigating that kind of situation is going to be really helpful. Awesome. Josh, I'm going to pass the mic to you for our next slide of virtues of an ally.
Okay, thanks, Junelle. Now, a study published in the Journal of Business Ethics identified these virtues on the left to be differentiators that made allyship more effective. And we created the list on the right to help give some contrast to what maybe we've each seen or experienced or could experience. But I just want to briefly just talk through them as an either or, and we can, if anybody has a particular comment or a question on any of them, feel free to chime in. But effective allies have compassion. They're aware of the discomforts and the sufferings of others, and they have some type of emotion associated with that. They're able to feel strongly about that imbalance. Whereas a performative ally might just be able to have some sympathy. They can see that there's some discomfort or some suffering, but they haven't yet got to the point where it feels similar to it feels like they're part of the struggle too. Effective allies are concerned with fairness and equity in the workplace, especially, whereas performative allies can have a lack of mutuality, where they are interested particularly in more fairness for some people, but maybe don't have the whole group in mind. Effective allies have humility, where they understand their own perspective can actually limit them from understanding someone else or their own experiences, their own cultural inputs. And a performative ally probably has a lack of self-awareness, that they're not understanding how their worldview has been formed, or thinks that they have a certain moral authority based on having some knowledge on a particular issue. Effective allies have perspective taking, and that's being able to understand multiple perspectives on an issue. Understanding that diverse people especially come with diverse perspectives, and that is a strength, and not just as we're performative allies have a sense that their perspective is the priority, their perspective is even the reality. So they want to shape the organization according to how they're seeing something. Prudence is a certain carefulness. And this, I think, goes back to a point I was trying to make earlier about having a loyalty to the org, and having a certain tenderness for even how slow some change can move sometimes. And that prudence is really effective in a long-term strategic solution, whereas a lack of commitment to the org can create or can just create more impatience or more anxiety around certain issues. Kristen, thanks for that question. Prudence and patience, are similar. And I think the part of the differentiation, I think of them very similarly too, but the study was differentiating particularly with a carefulness and patience as being more time oriented. But they're definitely, I think, related, and both are very, very useful. Moral courage is that sense of being able to act on your deepest held beliefs, or beliefs that could even be seem in contrast to the status quo. And that moral courage is required for somebody to act on the behalf of others for equity. And performative allies have a sense of self-celebration, of self-centering. One of the typical criticisms of performative allies is they show up when it's convenient for them, when it's according to their time frame, when they feel like their risk is ultimately lower. And honesty, to being able to both speak and receive truth from other people as a priority, as opposed to some performative allies might be thinking it's strategic to hide some of their true motivations, or their way that they behave elicits questions to what their true intentions could be. Like if they're trying to up their clout, or their rep up, as they say, by their behaviors, or are they being honest about their motivations and honest about the situation? Perseverance is that ability to endure despite obstacles and still move towards the goal. And the performative ally is more motivated by the end results, and oftentimes turns into a savior complex where they have a sense that they are the one that is being we hear expressions like a voice for the voiceless. And when somebody uses terms like that, that oftentimes discredits when you say that somebody or a group of people is voiceless, that really discredits their contributions that they made. And we don't, in authentic allyship, you don't want to belittle the contributions of others. And lastly, patience, that is a time-oriented position where whether the process is moving along quick enough for you, you're able to stay in there and continue for the long haul. Whereas performative allies, sometimes if they don't get the objectives that they were trying for immediately or quickly, they can fall off, or they can, another element is to pick up a new cause every few months and do a minimal amount of work, but lacks that patience to even stay in that discomfort, even if the results haven't gotten there yet. Is there anything else about this list that somebody would like to either question, or my brief definitions were very brief, so you could all, I'm sure, expand on them based on your knowledge and your experience. But we're trying to help make a differentiation here. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, the side by side, we're trying to make that differentiation so that we can see clearly maybe even some of our instincts or some of our mistakes in the past, and how where we may have failed or misstepped. And like I said, we're all learning here, and learning about each other's context includes understanding that we're developing and we're growing. We weren't always very effective. All right, well, let's start into these scenarios, because hopefully the very engaging time that we have in this next half hour will be in some breakout rooms where everybody has more chance to speak and to do some processing. So this scenario is, I think, really useful. It was also from this Harvard Business Review article, so it's particularly has a corporate setting, and I think while some of you may not work in different for-profit jobs, I think it can relate to your context as well. So I'll read it, and then we have some particular questions for you in your breakout. Paul Hewins, the president and CEO of Skanska USA, one of the largest construction firms in the country, also served as the executive sponsor of its women's network. We faced a safety issue, he said, explained, and aimed to elevate the profile of a new national director for environmental health and safety. He informed his executive team that she would present the issue and offer assistance during an upcoming meeting. Now, afterwards, he said, it was a disaster, he admitted. The setup was flawed. They were unprepared, and she struggled with her presentation. Ultimately, it had the opposite effect that we intended, demotivating her and discouraging her from taking further risks. She failed, and I ended up looking foolish for arranging it. So as we send you to your breakout groups, the two questions are going to be, which of those virtues did Paul embody? And if you not remembering the exhaustive list is fine. You just remember maybe one or two. And then also, what could Paul have done differently to support both his female colleague and to support the executive team more effectively? And send you to these breakout groups, and we'll do this one for about 6 minutes, and then we'll call you back.
Welcome back, everyone.
So we're in your breakout group. Was there any commonalities, common themes? What kind of wisdom did you derive together for the rest of us? Is there anything that you would be willing to share?
Cynthia and I in our chat, I think we just both agreed that Paul wasn't very collaborative. I think that like mutuality, I think he was kind of lacking that. Just even where he said like she failed, I looked foolish, versus like that he might have failed since he was like leading this. And then Cynthia pointed out just kind of a lack of self-awareness that he had, and even potentially like maybe he shouldn't have been in that role that he's in as the support or the chair. So just some thoughts there, and he could have worked better with his female colleague of like setting her up well for success, like maybe figuring out her comfortability with presenting or presenting to executives or things like that.
Oh, that's great. Anyone else? Well, we'll keep it moving this time for the sake of time. In the article, this is similar to what Jacqueline was saying, that Paul even said, now that I understand, I think about how we can put a message around the situation that shows there's value in. Then I start to pre-sell the issue. So when she comes into the meeting, she's not hitting them cold. But and then he said, let me take the risk in front of the group, then bring her in when she has a platform to be successful, which is almost verbatim what you were saying. But those key takeaways about the embracing humility, prioritizing the perspectives of others, and sharing the risks goes a long way, because that phrase, setting them up for success, that includes, if you're working as an ally, it's making yourself vulnerable. It's putting yourself in harm's way in some ways, but being willing to absorb some of the discomfort, or even as something as small as giving a little precursor for the group to have some type of familiarity with the topic, and then a warm introduction where the new executive wouldn't be talking to it, and in a comedy set, there's an opening comic who warms up the audience, so that when the headliner comes in, they're already laughing and ready to laugh. They're not stiff. And that's not that you want every board meeting to be a comedy situation. However, the same applies with having them be ready to be facilitated. Junelle, I'm going to pass that mic back to you for some of these. Let's get these strategies for active.
Thanks, Josh. Yes, and strategies I've heard some similar personalities in here in the room where confrontation is hard. Confrontation is hard, and being an authentic ally oftentimes takes, okay, like how do we speak up? Sometimes I feel uncomfortable making other people feel uncomfortable. So hopefully these are strategies that will continue to help us navigate being an authentic ally and speaking up when necessary. But this first strategy I want to talk about is really personal and saying it's honest introspection. So acknowledging that biases influence decisions and perceptions in the workplace. So there are tools that we can use that are online, such as the Harvard Implicit Association Test, and that has different self-assessments for bias. But it's also being able to reflect and list your privileges. And so we're not going to go too deep into what privileges means, but bringing in a sports scenario, privilege isn't bonus points for you and your team. It's unfair penalties the other team gets that you don't. So examples of privilege and also understanding, I saw a comment earlier that sometimes it can be hard. It seems hard to be an authentic ally because maybe I'm in a homogeneous environment. So how do I be an authentic ally if a lot of my coworkers are similar to myself? But in this list of privileges, I also want to be able to communicate that being an authentic ally is not just about race and gender, but there are so many other dynamics at play as well. In gender, it could be working in a male-dominated field. For example, I see this a lot in healthcare where primary care provider, the doctor comes in and it's a woman, and the patient's like, oh, well, where's my doctor? And so like that's a microaggression, and that's an example of being in a male dominated industry. Or it could be educational background where holding a degree from a prestigious or well-known college can provide some privilege as well. Or even a job title or position, right? I know that we work hard to get to the positions that we are at right now, right? But there are also dynamics in play that when you come to that position, there is privilege in itself as well, and we can utilize that to be an authentic ally, but really need to be having honest introspection and understanding what power dynamics are at play and how can I utilize that to uplift other people as well. Any questions about this first one before I move to the second, or comments as well? Okay, all on the same page then. So I am going to communicate the next strategy, which is situational awareness. And at the end of this, I'm going to share a great article with you all that I found on HBR about situational awareness and active allyship. But sometimes being an authentic ally means just paying attention to nonverbal cues. So a lot of us work in person or online as well, but there are a lot of nonverbal cues at play. For example, paying attention in a meeting, if someone's crossing their arms or their jaws are clenched, or if they're not making eye contact, you can really be able to see if someone is disengaged for whatever reason. And so paying attention to that is going to be able to be helpful, and following up with someone afterward and saying, hey, we talked about a new policy at work. I noticed XYZ. Do you want to be able to talk about it? And the emphasis on, do you want to talk about it as well? There's also listening for language and behavior and understanding situational awareness, listening for microaggressions. We did a session recently on microaggressions for Lunch and Learn, but we also have modules on microaggressions on the platform as well, but paying attention to bro banter or exclusionary language. And then also marking team dynamics. I think that our team does a really good job at this, where we have a weekly session where one individual brings in an article. We're continuously learning ourselves, so we bring in a new article and have a discussion on it. And our team does a good job in marking media dynamics and seeing, oh, this person hasn't spoken yet. Do you want to get a chance to speak? Because for me and myself, I know that there are many times that I did want to share some insight on a topic, but I was waiting for everyone else to speak. And so then I waited too long, and then I never got the opportunity to share some insight. But I think that happens all the time. And so just being able to mark, oh, like someone didn't speak up yet, but do you want to get a chance before we move on is a strategy for authentic allyship, as well as understanding or paying attention to who's being ignored or interrupted, who's missing from this conversation as well. So I want to be able to bring in a scenario. I was having a conversation with a friend that used to work in healthcare. She worked in a city hospital in the Pacific Northwest, and there a lot going on in that city hospital all the time. And she really thrived in there, but she did note some things that she shared with me as well. So kind of summarized it into a scenario and then took out, well, she didn't tell me any names, but I just put a random name in there. But for this scenario, during a busy shift at a city hospital, the emergency room staff experienced heightened tension due to increasingly anxious patients with state insurance. One particular patient, Ms. Johnston, repeatedly pressed the call bell. She insisted, "I just need to make sure that you're going to take care of me." And my friend had shared oftentimes that this happened a lot, where they would hit the call bell and it would be something simple for like, can I have a snack? Can I have a drink? It's very simple things, not emergency situations. And this, I also want to say, is applicable even if you're not in healthcare. This is if you're working in the service industry, if you're working in communities as well. But really understanding and having relationships with people is key to being an authentic ally. So from the surface level, nurse's perspective that she shared with me is that in this situation, nurses are under significant stress, managing maybe 8 patients. And this is one of the individual patients they have. There's pressure to do everything correctly and to be able to respond promptly to emergencies. And so every time there's a call bell, it's like, okay, what's going on? Is it an emergency? So it's a high stress environment. And sometimes even if we see this all the time, then the frequent calls might feel like they're disruptive or assuming her requests are minor. But as my friend was coming deeper into the relationship with the patient, she actually understood that there's a lot of there's a lot of awareness around, if I have state insurance, I fear that my care will be subpar. It won't be great because I have state insurance. And so there's socioeconomic dynamics at play here that I don't feel like because of my insurance, I'm not going to get good care. So I need to advocate it for myself. And she believes that if she doesn't assertively voice her needs, she may be overlooked or mistreated. There's also the factor of maybe not having medical knowledge, and being in a hospital is a very vulnerable, very vulnerable situation, right? And being in the community, if you're working in the community, sometimes you're working with people who are in very vulnerable situations. And so she felt the need to constantly remind the nurses and the care providers that, hey, I'm here, please help me. I don't know what's going on. And so really, but that perspective taking is one of the virtues that Josh had mentioned earlier that my friend was really great at doing. And that made her a really great authentic ally, not just to her colleagues, but also the people that she was serving. And I really want to emphasize here that being an authentic ally in relationship, you see your coworkers on a weekly basis, daily basis, but it's also about being an authentic ally to the people that you are serving in the communities that you're working with as well. So with this quick breakout session, oh, actually, looking at the time, I'm going to skip that breakout session, but a few key takeaways that I want to be able to say is, again, being an authentic ally is about being in relationship with people. And some of the ways that she found useful in working in the community is getting to know the person, engaging in conversation about the background of, hey, taking the time to say, did you grow up in the city? Or are you expecting any guests while you're here? Asking questions, exactly. Thank you, Kristen. Asking questions to get to know someone, because sometimes someone just needs to feel seen and heard and understood in where they're at, no matter if they are a patient, if they are a colleague. We are all human beings and we all want authentic relationship. And it's also about listening actively, whether it is listening actively to the answers of the questions you're asking, or also, again, the nonverbal cues that, people are crossing their arms, are they closed off, things of that nature as well. And Josh, I'll pass the mic to you for this last strategy as well.
Thanks, Junelle, for walking us through that scenario. The last 3 strategies for active allyship we want to highlight have to do with empathetic engagement, and that's to embrace the journey that this work is going to take a long time, likely, and if some changes are made, they're going to need to be supported, and helping people change is not just a one-time act, but there's a period of adjustment and follow through. Understanding the human element, that was, I liked how Junelle was putting flesh on those bones of, we're not talking just about policies or just about rules and regulations, but we're human beings trying to live in a world together. And then also to check your motives and your motivations. To what degree does the person want to be looked out for or looked out for by you? Do they want you to act or speak on their behalf? And then also, to what degree do I want to do this because it's what I believe? And is the environment and culture I want to set in this group or the team? And some final, want to focus on some takeaways for the end here, that effective allyship is not a badge for your personal benefit, something that could, increase your standing because you identify that way, but it's has to do with both of those relations with communities or individuals, as well as those acts of sponsorship or acts of systemic change. Approaching allyship is meant to be like preparing for a marathon, a long journey, not a sprint, the short and quick one. Supportive relationship building happens through respect, empathy, trust. Those are critical elements of building those relationships, and authentic allyships marked often by public acts of sponsorship and advocacy in the workplace in ways that come to benefit those communities. And reminders about postures of listening, learning, recognizing privilege, and finally speaking up. Junelle, I would pass the mic back to you to take us home with these resources.
Yeah, so we have a couple of modules currently on the Ed-Enuf platform about being an authentic ally, and we'll also send the links to some key articles that we had mentioned earlier as well. But thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to be able to end with 1 minute to spare, which is great. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.